So hello and welcome to Forever Great in Conversation. It is time for episode 8. I cannot believe we're in episode 8 already and we're in October. Winter is coming, clocks have changed, and I couldn't think of anyone better to have a conversation with than the one and only Andrew Johnson. Andrew is with us tonight and I thank him very much for sharing his time. And as we're recording at night, with the curtain shut, we're cosy, we're doing this at night. And before I go over to Andrew, I'm just going to give a very brief overview of who the man is that we're going to have a conversation with on episode 8. So Andrew Johnson is a Scottish mindfulness and behaviour change expert whose multi-million download self-help apps are being enjoyed the world over. For over 25 years, he has helped people relax, change and create the lives they want through his range of self-care recordings, guided meditation apps, online courses and workshops. His work has motivated and empowered people across the world and helped them cope with stress, overcome anxiety, fears, break habits and achieve their full potential. With over 15 million downloads and streams to date, Andrew's recordings are the best-selling, some of the best-selling, he picked me up on this last time, self-help recordings and on the Apple and Android app stores. And he is with us now. Andrew, how are you?
Cheers, Frank. I'm great. As you said, it's not only October, it's almost November. Where has the time gone?
It's almost November. Can you believe it?
I'm really good. As you said, the blinds are shut. Everything's cool. Just chilling out. Good to speak to you. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, listen, it's great to have you. It's great to have you with us, Andrew. We did just give you all a heads up for those watching at home on YouTube and for those listening to the podcast. We did try and record this a week ago back, and with some problems with tech, so we brought it back to life and we're taking 2, and we're going to make it happen tonight, Andrew, aren't we?
We are. The last time, I think we were both sounding like drunk Daleks.
And listen, there's a time and a place for that, but it's not for this. So Andrew, tell us, where can we find you? Where are you right now?
I am in the centre of Edinburgh. I've been here 4 years. So loving being in Edinburgh, loving being in the city. Although, as you know, things are very different this year than they've been every other year. So yeah. Edinburgh, like most places, is a very changed city, and especially I have to say in Edinburgh, simply because of lack of tourists. It's extraordinary what a difference it makes.
Yeah. And what's it been like for you then, Andrew, since March? I mean, the world is changing daily. And how have you coped? What's it been like for you since March?
Well, I've been really busy. But that busyness started because just before lockdown, because I knew that lockdown was coming, I started doing something I hadn't done for a long time, which was live meditations. I started on Facebook. My Facebook audience is pretty healthy, and they're a good bunch. And on Instagram, so I was doing 2 a day, and I thought I would do maybe 2 a day for 2 or 3 days. And I've been doing them ever since. So I think I'm on day 200 and something or other already. Although I'm no longer doing them on social media, I'm doing them on a dedicated meditation app called Circles Live. And there has been an audience that has been with me, some people every single day that I've been meditating 7 days a week, which I find wonderful, and that's something I've never had before. It's also refreshed my love of doing a regular meditation practice. Something that I've been in the meditation game, or practicing it, not formally to start with, but for many decades now.
Uh-huh.
And when you do it for that length of time, it just becomes something that you do. It's not unless you have a very dedicated meditation practice, which I've never had, I've always tried to meditate at least once or twice a week. But what this has done is given me a really refreshed love for doing a particular time a day for a particular length of time. And it has really given me a tremendous boost. And now that I see how people are benefiting from it, I really do love doing it. So as I say, I'm now what is it, March, April, gosh,
yes,
6-7 months.
I know. It's
just
crazy.
God.
It's crazy when you think back. So I suppose what's really interesting about that point, Andrew, before we get into your story and how you managed to find that this was your calling and this was your purpose, I suppose what you're saying there is that the value you give your audience, you've actually gained value through that yourself, because it's kind of programmed you again to get back into doing the meditation more, I feel like. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that is fair to say, because meditation, like many things, is something that there's no real end destination. The journey is what's important. It's the journey that you're on, and the fact that I'm now sort of surprising myself with some of the stuff that's coming through, that I thought, oh, I'd forgotten about that particular technique, or I'd forgotten to do this. And what's also interesting is, with a very regular audience every day, they're now suggesting what I should be doing.
Excellent.
I actually had a suggestion last week that we should do a silent meditation for half an hour. And I thought, oh, I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign that they want me to shut up. But there is something nice that, even though the audience is from all over the world, there's this little community formed. And there is something nice about knowing that people are meditating at the same time. On one of the channels last week, I think I had nearly 500 people meditating at once. So it was wonderful.
Which is just so powerful. And I think what I love about what it is that you do, Andrew, is that obviously you can do this physically and in the presence of people, but you're able to touch and capture a much wider audience right now based on technology. So technology has absolutely worked for you based on what you do, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, and I think an awful lot of people in lockdown, because I know there's a lot of yoga teachers and other teachers that I know in Edinburgh, and a lot of them were scrambling to get onto the online space when lockdown happened. Maybe not the first week or the second week, but when people started to realise it was going to go on a bit longer, people were scrambling to get on to the online space. And it was really only then that I realised how ingrained technology was in my business, and how I had sort of forgotten a lot of the stuff that I knew, because it's been part and parcel of my business right from the very first websites of 20 plus years ago, 25 years ago.
So actually digitization's been a key part of your business model?
Absolutely. And it's something that has and now I still can't tell what's the definition. I'm either a geek or a nerd or a dweeb or something.
I would say you're an early adopter. That's what I would say.
Okay, that's very polite. I'll say that. I'm an early nerd adopter, but I do like technology, and I'm very, very aware of the disruption that technology has caused, and the difficulty with social media, and the difficulty with phone addictions and things like that. But I'm also aware that had we not had this ability to communicate like the way we are during this global disruption, things would have been a lot harder.
Absolutely. And even what we're able to do. So I would have normally have loved you down in the studio in Ayrshire and Marathon House. We can't make that happen, but we're doing like what most businesses are having to do right now is pivot and try and deliver their value in their service, I should say, through a different platform, through a different channel. Before we go into Andrew, what it is that you're focusing on now, and just the success that you've felt through the downloads, the energy, the people that are checking in with you. You spoke about 500 recently on one of your live meditations. when did you realise, taking a step back, when did you realise that this was where you were meant to be, or that voice of yours was of value to people in terms of all the different things that you do with it? Yeah, you record, but we've got down here obviously the meditation, the mindfulness, the relaxation therapy. When did you realise in your life that that was for you?
Well, I was introduced to meditation at school, not actually at school, but when I was at school, it was an external martial arts class that I did for a little while, and I was introduced to meditation there in my mid-teens. And I sort of had a very informal practice with it, but I knew it was doing something for me. But it was years and years later, almost 20 years later, that I took a big career shift and went into becoming a therapist. And I knew from day one of my training, it was an 18-month course in clinical hypnotherapy. And I knew that from day one, this is what I wanted to do. But quite quickly, from seeing one-to-one clients, I started working for a charity, a cancer charity in Ayrshire. And I quite quickly started doing groups and teaching coping skills and resilience. In those days, you couldn't, I mean, I'm talking 23, 24 years ago, you couldn't really talk about meditation or mindfulness. It was still, well, depending on your audience, it was pretty much frowned upon. Things have changed radically, of course, now. But then it was kind of difficult to introduce that. But I knew that I was teaching people really lifelong skills, teaching them how to reduce anxiety, how to sleep, as you said, how to relax and change and create, these three buzzwords that have stuck with me for all these years.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
And it suddenly became apparent that the more that I did with groups was something that I loved doing. I was in my flow. I was in my element. Or as someone said to me earlier this year, you were in your elephant, weren't you, when you were doing that? I said, yes, that's right. I was in my elephant.
A lot of people also talk about, Andrew, that the whole you're feeding your soul. You're actually feeding the soul.
Following your bliss. And I recognize that I have huge gratitude for the series of coincidences that led me. And there's no such thing as coincidence, but you know what I mean. I'm got eternal gratitude for the path that led me down. It was doing one of the groups way back in Ayrshire Cancer Support, and a request from them that could I do a recording, that led me then to going into the recording studio and recording my very first audio. And as a therapist, that became, that was the first sort of introduction for me into technology. It was, okay, I've got a couple of recordings now. How do I get them out to a bigger audience? And that became a sort of lifelong sort of journey, very slowly to start with, very amateurish about getting onto the internet. And I'm talking, you know, before the internet.
You're talking before the internet.
Well, sort of.
Not quite.
Yeah, but before e-commerce and before PayPal and before easy programs to develop, you know, to build websites, it was very amateurish. But you know, I recognised that there was something happening there within the digital space.
Yeah, it was the start. So that was the start of your journey with the recording. And I mean, let's talk briefly even just about that, Andrew, in terms of the technology, the evolution of technology. So where you started to record from your first recording to how you're recording now, I'd imagine there's quite a significant transformation in the process now.
Yes. Well, recording studio was the only way really to do it at that point, going to a professional recording studio. And that in itself was great initially when I was only doing one recording every 3 or 4 months. And that would produce a digital file or a CD. And the big change, the first big change came when computers started getting external CD burners and then internal CD burners, and it came as standard. And so I would be burning my own CDs, putting little labels on them, printing off the cases, posting them out. You know, people would send me a check, I would post them out. And I think I think, oh my God, honestly, I think if I sold 2 or 3 CDs a week, I was in, you know, that was a good week.
But I love even there though, you're talking about CDs and checks.
Yeah.
CDs and checks I'm not saying they're obsolete, but think about the shift change in they two things themselves.
Oh yes, completely. And this has been the pace when you think back that's not that long ago.
It's not.
It's not that long ago when I was burning CDs and doing things like that. And then the next change, of course, was I had a bit of luck with the CDs. I was mentioned in a nationwide magazine. They did a photo shoot of 3 people who had stopped smoking. And they had phoned me and asked if they could speak to one of my clients. And I, of course, I'm bound by client confidentiality.
Yeah.
But I had recently been contacted by some woman who had helped stop smoking previously. And she had said she'd been telling everybody. And I thought, well, I'll reach out to her, I'll call her and see if she'd be up for this. And of course she was. And I sold a ton of CDs through that magazine. And I got CDs professionally made. And at that point, I had 4 titles. And to get them done in any value, you had to get 1,000 of each. So I think I ordered 4,000 CDs. And they came in they arrived in lots and lots of boxes about 3 weeks before Steve Jobs announced the iPod and MP3s. And I was like, oh dear, oh dear. And I think somewhere there's still boxes of these CDs kicking about. And that, when you look back, that was the death of the CD.
But you had to then. You had to again take on board this new technology, and you had to again diversify and think about, okay, I have to be engaging in this because if this is where it's going, this is where I need to be, and that's exactly what you did.
Well, yes, and if you think about it now, the thoughts of producing something out of plastic and posting it across the world, when now that same audio can be delivered in seconds across the world. Environmentally, that has to be that's an amazing thing. And so the next stage for me was to sell MP3s, versions of my recordings. A professional website was built. And because there was a little uptake in sales, I started recording more. I was, funnily enough, I was recording, I think at that time, in a studio in just outside Ayr in Netherrock and Drain. I don't know if you know that.
Netherrock and Drain, yeah. It's in the way, is that in the way, if you're not from Ayrshire, guys, I'm sure that's in the way, is that in the back roads to Maybole or down the Carrick Hills?
And then I went into a studio booth in West Sound. And I got a lot of recordings done at West Sound in their vocal booth. And I started thinking, oh well, I could make something. I could construct a booth. But the next stage for me was then discovering that you can, with the right setup, you can record directly onto a solid state MacBook. So there's no whirring of hard drives, there's no fans, etc., etc. So that was a revelation, and that geared me up again to do more recordings.
So it's been a constant journey of learning then, Andrew, hasn't it? And adapting and using technology to your advantage.
Well, if you get caught out, as I did, on the shift between cassette and CDs, and then caught out between the shift between CDs and MP3s, and there's been a much bigger shift since then, of course, which is the shift into delivering recordings within apps. and then the streaming
Yeah.
of those recordings rather than downloading them.
What I love about this about you, and this is where I admire the chats for yourself, is because we're not here actually, we're not even getting into you around your core value. We're talking about your journey and innovation and how you've had to adapt as an entrepreneur to you've had to adapt the technology that you use in order to get your value to the end user across these years. And you're now at a place where you can celebrate something like 15 million downloads, over 100,000 people follow you and follow your journey on social media. I mean, your value is appreciated and getting bought into from across the world. That must feel great, and it must feel empowering for you, Andrew, to spend that time and have people reaching out and buying, engaging your products. Can you share, and I get and fully appreciate the client confidentiality fully and respect that, but do you have a couple of anecdotes, stories that you could share with us? One that sticks out with you of someone who has engaged in one of your many apps or services and has reached out and shared with you the impact you had on their lives?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this is the same stories I told you in my Dalek face with the bad broadband.
It was a great story.
Well, so one of the things that happens with one-to-one clients, you very rarely hear back from them unless they need another session. But with the recordings, people will email me or message me on social media. And a few years ago, I got a message from a woman in Australia, a lady in Australia, who had been using my apps for a number of years to help her relax. And she had been out mowing the lawn in Australia and had been bitten by a snake. And I think I'm right in saying they call it a tiger snake. I haven't looked at the story for a few years, but she was bitten by a highly poisonous snake, and she recognized the snake. She knew she had been bitten, called her husband. The husband called the ambulance, and she sat down on the back stoop or the back porch or whatever she called it, and she said in her story that she thought, what would Andrew tell me to do? And she slowed her breathing, and she really dropped her heart rate, and she got into this as deeply into a relaxed state as she could given the circumstances. And eventually the ambulance came, and they got her into the ambulance. They started working on her way to hospital. And they were absolutely amazed, given the time she had been sitting there, that the poison hadn't had as much of a negative effect. And she puts that down to the fact that she relaxed and just chilled out and theoretically stopped the blood moving as quickly or our heart pumping as quickly. And that was a story that blew my mind, because that was someone who had learned these techniques, who then had enough presence of mind to do that. And, I have to say, it brought a little tear to my eye when I read that originally. But there's been a number of ones like that. But you see, so many of the people will talk to me and they'll send me an email and they'll say, I've been listening to your apps for years, and it's the one thing that helped me move from insomnia to a better sleeping pattern. And that's not hugely exciting to tell that to anyone else, but for that person who's not been sleeping for a number of years, now that they've rebuilt a decent sleeping pattern, that's worth its weight in gold.
So much. And actually, I would say that. 100%, and I would say that let's not underestimate the power of sleep. And I think that what I think is fascinating about what it is that you do is that actually your voice helps people go to sleep across the world each night, and that's such a unique offering. That's such a unique story. How many other people get to do that kind of thing? So it's such a great. I think it's actually a privilege and an honour actually that people listen to your voice and help them calm and hopefully drift off into a safe good night's sleep, feeling ready for the day ahead the next day.
Yes, and it's got to the stage now that I mean, one of my deep sleep recording, which was probably recorded maybe 12 or 13 or 14 years ago, maybe, round about that time, certainly pre-apps, that same recording is still being used. I've got deep sleep on a platform called Insight Timer, which is one of the biggest meditation apps in the world. And I checked the other day and it's had 1.3 million streams. And that really blew my mind. Now, the fact of the matter is, I know that's partly due to the fact that people are using it on a nightly basis. You know, it's not something they listen to once and then don't listen to, but a lot of people will listen to that 10 days in a row or 20 days in a row. But 1.3 million streams, that was extraordinary. So, and I will always say to people, no matter what's going on in their life, whether it's physical or emotional or financial or whatever it is, if you can get a better night's sleep, things do seem a bit easier. So it's always the first port of call that I will go to.
I'm glad you've mentioned that part, Andrew, because I want to speak to you about the whole Relax, Change and Create campaign and your focus where you are right now. Before we jump onto that, regardless who comes and sees you for, let's say, a one-to-one where it's happening physically or virtually right now, and it could be do with a phobia or they've got anxiety, they've got stress, they can't sleep. What's the kind of first thing you would recommend it to do? Is it regardless what it is that a sleep's really important? Because regardless of condition, listen, I'm not an expert in this. That's why I'm speaking to you. But would you say, or go as strongly to say that a good night's sleep is fundamental, regardless what form of mental anxiety or stress that you're currently experiencing?
Yeah, I mean, if someone has a phobia or severe anxiety, a better night's sleep won't help necessarily with the phobia or the anxiety, but it will make them more resilient, give you better clarity of thought, give you more energy. So we'll all tackle, although I don't see clients one-to-one these days unless someone reaches out to me.
Yeah,
I don't advertise, but it's always very much a case of tackling the presenting problem initially, whether it's a phobia or anxiety or emotional pain or physical pain. And now I also have such a range of recordings that I can specify what recording to use as I like to call it a belt and braces approach. So the people will have a session, then they will have a little recording that they use. That will give them a little pat in the back. Now, the majority of people with busy lives and families, etc., will put that recording on last thing at night on their smartphone or tablet. And more often than not, that will help. No matter what the subject matter, they will fall asleep during it. There's a lot of research to say that even if you fall asleep listening to a meditation, it still goes in. In fact, some people would say that the suggestions on the meditation go in even better if you fall asleep. The jury's out on it, but there's certainly no doubt that they do work.
That it helps.
Yeah. So by the very nature of listening to something that relaxes you, potentially helps you sleep, that gives that added bonus no matter what you're trying to tackle.
I see. So yeah, it may not help someone who's got a phobia or balloons, let's just say, but actually if you've got regardless, if we've all got a good night's sleep, we've got a better perspective in the morning potentially, we've got clarity of mind, we're feeling potentially more ready for the day ahead. But every circumstance is different. Let's talk about the Relax, Change and Create where you are now. So for anyone watching and listening, first of all, thank you to everyone watching on the YouTube channel and for everyone downloading the podcast. Very much appreciated. Where can they find out more about your Relax, Change and Create approach, Andrew? Share that with us.
Well, so My website is simply andrewjohnson.co.uk, and if you put my name into Google and put relax or meditation,
You'll find it.
You'll find it. I've been on the internet long enough that, and it is as simple as that. I wish I had a name that couldn't be spelled in three or four different ways, but that's the way of it. So it's just Johnston, Johnsson. So if you put that into Twitter or put it into Google, you'll find me. Relax, Change, Create has been my tagline for a long time, well over 10 years. But it became much more of a philosophy, of a way of categorizing my recordings. About 5 years ago, when I realized that for people to work towards success, whatever success means to you, whether it's getting a job or cooking your first omelette or making £1 million or learning to drive, whatever it means to you, whatever that word success means to you, there's sort of three things that you need to do. You need to be able to get into a relaxed state. That's number one. That's hugely important. The vast majority of people out there have never been taught to relax.
How to do it.
How to do it. And there's a simple technique, or there's a range of simple techniques that can retrain your body in what's called the relaxation response, so that you are able, without external use of, without doing the negative things like having a beer or screaming at someone, or the positive things like going for a massage, which is difficult these days, or going for a run if it's rainy outside, or all these positive things. Without any external influence, you're able to just slow your heart rate, take your breathing deeper, etc. Very much like that woman with the snake did. And that leads on to so many benefits in life. There are simple techniques that you can learn to do that. The second thing is the change category, which is how to take yourself from a negative state to balance. Now, a negative state can be a chemical addiction, a physical pain, intrusive thoughts, negative thoughts, phobias, all those things that keep us down. And there are a variety of simple techniques that can be taught in person, in a group, in a workshop, or by recordings that will take you from negative to balance. Equilibrium.
Great word.
Equilibrium. And then the third pillar is called create. And this is a range of techniques that will take you from balance into a positive state, a heightened state of awareness. So these are things like setting intentions, setting goals, stating affirmations, developing a positive mindset, getting yourself into heightened emotional and physical states, goal setting, and things that when bundled together are now called the law of attraction, which is very popular these days, but it has always been, it's a relatively new name to bundle together getting yourself into a heightened state. Now, what became apparent to me quite a while ago was that there are a lot of people who want to move towards success, whatever that word means to you, and they will try one of these pillars. They will try to meditate, which is wonderful. Some people succeed. They will try to get rid of their gremlins, which is wonderful, and some people succeed. And they will try to get into a heightened state with goal setting and law of attraction, and some will succeed. But what became really apparent to me, as I say, a while back, was the fact that each one of those things is very good, but when you have tools and techniques that cover all three, that's when success becomes much easier. Because it is when you goal set and you visualize, it's a lovely thing and an amazing thing to be able to do. But when you can do it from a deep state of relaxation, that's incredible when you can do it from that deep meditative state. But it's very difficult to goal set and get into a successful mindset if you've got negative chatter and negative patterns, chemical addictions, physical pain. Very difficult to see yourself breaking out of that. It's also, if you are dealing with negative pain, negative thoughts, intrusive thoughts, phobias, whatever, old patterns, it's very difficult to get yourself into a positive state. Does that make sense? So, and it's also very difficult to recognize your patterns and your gremlins without becoming a little bit more self-aware, which is what meditation does. It makes us aware of our patterns and our drives and our functions and our thought processes. But many people will start doing meditation, realize that it's connecting with parts of themselves that are a little difficult to deal with, and because they've got no mechanism to deal with that, they give up in the meditation. When in actual fact, if you go with it and you deal with it, it can be illuminating, enlightening. So that's why these three pillars of work on ourselves are so fundamental and so transformative.
I love it, Andrew, and I think for me, the way you've articulated it, I'm sure many others listening and watching this will take so many different things from that. I suppose for me, it's about what we're not saying here is we're not saying to people that this is all about some kind of utopian, everything's amazing, everything's wonderful. It's about saying, look, we're all human. We've all got things that we need to deal with. And what I love about these three pillars for me is this whole, is it, Andrew, about recognizing yourself? First and foremost, you have to be self-aware to recognize that I need to find a relaxing state. I need to find something that works for me. When that happens, it then leads into me being able then to facilitate change. I'm now ready to embrace change because I've allowed some form of relaxation. And then once you get into that change phase, you're then thinking, actually, I'm now seeing change and I'm now ready to look at the next stage of the future. Goal setting.
Well, that's very true. That's incredibly true. And yet, here's the secret. There's not one of those three pillars that's more important than the other. So you can start in either of them. It's just because we live in this world that there's one word, then a second word, then a third word, that it tends to take on that form.
Yeah.
But so there will be people who will, they'll read the book The Secret, they will watch the video, they will get inspired, they will do everything that they think is right. They will goal set, they will set intentions, they'll create a vision board, they will do what they want to do to create the life, but it's not happening, And maybe, just maybe, it's because they've got some sort of underlying negative pattern that we all have.
I think that's so powerful. I really think that's so powerful. So again, what you're saying there and what I'm getting from that is you're saying, Frank, people can be at the create stage. You don't need to start at the relax stage, but it could be, it could be if you have got that kind of vision board and here's where I want to be, but you're not getting there. Is it because you've not dealt with the relaxation,
dealt with the baggage
thing? Right, it's great, really powerful.
And maybe you're dealing with the baggage and you're doing it okay, but it's slow, and it's because you've not done the projection into the future of how good it could be. You've not taken yourself into that positive state.
You've not allowed yourself to go there.
Yes, because the baggage is a bit heavy, but it does rely, in many ways, it does rely on having a toe in all three camps. Just to experiment. Now, one of the things that also happened by beautiful synchronicity with the stuff that I've done is that a lot of the stuff and the techniques that I've learned are the techniques that I can pass on quickly to people. So my job has always been, I know this and I teach you and now you know this, rather than I know this and I do it to you.
Yeah.
And then you need to keep coming back and seeing me. So all the techniques that I use are relatively quick to learn. They can become integrated within you quite quickly, because once you've learned the relaxation response and you build on it and then you use that to go into meditation and mindfulness, it's your technique.
Yeah.
It's yours. You will never lose that.
It becomes second nature as such. It becomes just part of who you are.
Yeah. Now, what will happen is that there are people who say, I meditated once, but then, you know, I get made unemployed and I was too stressed. And you think, isn't that funny? That's the perfect time that you should have been meditating more.
So
there is a classic quote that says, you know, if you don't have time to meditate for 20 minutes, meditate for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Because it's so important. If you've got no time, and this is one of the classic things that people learn when they start this meditation, especially men, especially businessmen who say, I don't have time to put 20 minutes aside for meditation. And some people will say that, mean it, and they never do it. And some people will say, okay, I think there's enough importance for me to try this. I don't think I've got time to do it, but I'll try it. And the people who do it and stick with it for 3 or 4 weeks, almost universally will then come back and say, do you know, it's funny? I now seem to have more time. And it's because this is a bit clearer.
Yeah, I think that's it. You know, but what I'm getting from this as well is that it's that for me allowing yourself. It's that being able to allow yourself as being your own, within your own existence. I'm going to take 20 minutes to declutter, to get a bit of clarity. Whether it be sit and look at a tree with some leaves falling, whether it be sitting having a coffee in a park or a bottle of water in a park, just watching the world go by. I think it's about as well, Andrew, the definitions of things. We've not got time to go into it all, but it's people's understanding. I think it's about what you're great at is telling people, here's what meditation could mean to you. Here's what mindfulness can mean to you. It doesn't need to be maybe what people interpret it to be.
Oh, absolutely. And here's the thing, if you read any of the books of some of the great creative thinkers, Leonardo da Vinci, Beethoven, Henry Ford, Edison, Bill Gates, so many of them, Einstein, they all will tell the same story. They will say that their great leaps forward didn't come sitting at the desk scratching their head. The great epiphanies of creativity came on a walk, when they woke up in the morning, in a shower if they had showers in Beethoven's day, but when they weren't trying. And it's that ability to let go of the trying that allows the creativity to come through.
I love that.
That's when
that's my quote.
That's why if I'm working with well, I mean, none of us are really working in the corporate world at the moment, because there's very few corporate worlds working at the moment. But when I would tell them all that if they're doing some sort of what's it called? Brainstorming exercise.
Brainstorming, thought showers,
Thought showers. I will say to them, the best thing you can do in brainstorming when you're trying to be creative is think of the most ludicrous thing. Ludicrous, stupid, funny. Get the laughter going. People relax. And all of a sudden the real gems come out. It's from the relax. No one ever did anything stressed.
But I love you're even bringing your 3-tier process into that, because once people relax through the bonkers blue sky thinking idea, then they're then more probably willing then to change and bring themselves to the fore, and then they're then ready to create the concept or create the ideas. So you're bringing cleverness as well with bringing your approach in there. I don't know if that was meant or not, Andrew, but I love it.
But no, it wasn't meant, Frank. But the fact of the matter is, the more that I discuss processes, the more that you see there are these three pillars. And some people do it naturally.
I'm there. I'm there with them 100%. Listen, I'm conscious of time, and we always wrap up with the Forever Great in Conversation 3 questions.
Yep.
Are you ready for them?
I am ready.
Question number 1. Where is your favourite place in Scotland to go and visit?
All right. Well, if it's a very, I'm going to give you 2 answers here. If it's a very short visit.
That's been greedy.
If it's a very short visit, somewhere I discovered only a couple of weeks ago, which is the Royal Observatory in Edinburgh. Not the actual building, but up at the top of the hill there's a 360-degree view, and on a clear day, it is breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking. For the whole city, and then way up, over to North Berwick and way down and way over and in every direction. However, for a longer stay, I love Glencoe and up in that area. Yeah. So
Glencoe for a longer stay, a bit of a drive, and then the city that you're resident in right now, Scotland's capital, you like, because it's fairly recent, it's a fairly recent discovery, the Royal Observatory. Great.
A recent discovery for me, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Who's the person that inspires you? Go for it.
Eckhart Tolle. Probably the most authentic sort of messenger, if that's the right word, on earth at the moment. He wrote The Power of Now, which has been a massive seller and has introduced a huge amount of people to mindfulness, although he doesn't use that terminology. He uses the word presence. But if it's something that interests you, Eckhart Tolle is wonderful.
Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, someone who really walks the walk and talks the talk, and hugely authentic.
So we need to check out The Power of Now, and we need to check out Eckhart Tolle because he's the author. Yeah. He's the author. And the final one, Andrew, because we need to finish off in style here. We can't lose you again. We've came so far. What's the quote? You're a guy with quotes, man. You're bound to have an abundance of quotes in that notebook of yours. What's the quote that's your favourite quote?
All right. So there's an author called Marianne Williamson. She's a spiritual author and teacher. She wrote a wonderful book called A Return to Love. And one of her quotes is, my favourite all-time quote is, "The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off." And that has stood me in good stead for over 20 years because
that's so strong.
It's so true, because there are times that someone will say something or do something and you think, my God, that's really affected me. And you think, that's pissed me off. And then after a while, you start to realize, wait a minute, was it those words? Was it that person's energy? Or was it something in me that was reacting because of something in the past? Why am I pissed off at this? Why am I angry or guilty or upset or something? And then you realize a truth. And the truth is normally about ourselves, about a little gremlin that we've been holding on to for too long.
For some time.
Yeah. And we can then get into doing things like forgiveness exercises, which is all about
moving on,
forgiving ourselves.
Andrew Johnson, thank you so much for being present with me.
Thank you for inviting me, Frank. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You're someone who I could continue this conversation on with for some time. Thank you for being part of Forever Great in Conversation. Very much appreciate it. There's so many things that I've taken from this, and I'm sure everyone watching the YouTube channel and the podcast will do it the same. I hope folks that are watching and listening managed to cope with the fill-in gap that I had for a few seconds and to manage to connect the main man back on screen. Until next time, folks, please look after yourselves. Stay safe. These are strange, difficult times we're living in. But remember, there's always hope and there's always people there to support. And if you're looking for a bit of support during this, make sure you check Andrew Johnson's details out online and get involved in the whole relax, change and create movement. We'll see you in November for another episode of Forever Great in Conversation. But until then, take care. Thank you very much.